by borrowed money.
It's time for a Britain where the best values count again.
And it's time for a leader whose values are the values of the British people.
I've worked to ensure that Labour is forward-looking and fit to provide good government for our country. Now I know that we have the talented people and the practical policies needed to deal effectively with the challenges and with the opportunities of the 1990s. This country has enormous strengths. We've got some of the world's best companies and most committed workforces, some of the greatest scientists and inventors, some of the most outstanding artists and sports people. By electing Labour, you'll be electing a government to build on those strengths. You'll be electing a government that really believes in Britain and the people of Britain, a government that will invest in Britain and the British people. It's time for a new lead in our country. It's time for a new government with people of energy and vision to bring out the best in Britain. That means making real changes to improve childcare, schools, hospitals, training. It means making basic changes to get jobs, to build houses, and see the streets are clean and safe. That's the kind of change people want. Everybody knows it. It's time for a change. It's time for Labour.
That was a party election broadcast by the Labour Party. It'll be shown again with subtitles over on BBC Two at 10:30.
What you got here is a silver-plated copy. Well, look for yourself, Major.
This is devastating. God, don't do such a thing.
Who indeed? Lovejoy, Sunday at 7:45.
Roll the tape.
Patricia, just a few more questions. Throw it here. I'm sorry. No, don't do that to you.
Get the full wax in 45 minutes.
Ruby, Ruby.
First on BBC One, Sue Cook and Nick Ross with this month's Crimewatch UK.
Good evening. Someone you know, someone you've seen, something you remember, something you hear tonight may transform a major criminal inquiry. BBC staff and some 40 detectives are here waiting for your call. The number to ring 081 811 8181, not incidentally as printed in the Radio Times. And we've a Minicom phone if you've one too and are hard of hearing. Here's the number on your screens now.
Our first reconstruction tonight is the murder of a little girl more than 16 years ago. It's a case that has shocked the nation twice. In October 1975, 11-year-old Leslie Moleseed was murdered on her way to the local shop. And for some time afterwards, parents everywhere thought twice before letting young children go out alone. Then, last month, came the second shock. Stefan Kishko, the man convicted of murder years ago, was cleared by the Court of Appeal. He'd spent 16 years in jail for a crime he couldn't possibly have committed. So now the investigation into the murder of Leslie Moleseed has reopened. Key witnesses from 1975 have helped us to make this reconstruction. We hear the voice of Leslie's mother, April, but an actress takes her part. With your help tonight, perhaps it's not too late to see justice finally take its proper course. Our film begins in Rochdale in Lancashire on Sunday, October the 5th, 1975.
She loved her music. She liked the Bay City Rollers. That was her passion. She used to run around with a tartan scarf tied round her arm, you know, and those Bay City Rollers stockings and whatnot. And her sister used to argue a lot because she was always pinching her sister Laura's Bay City Roller posters, and Just a rough, tumble little girl she was. It's just she was exceptionally small, that was all. She looked very delicate, very small. She had open heart surgery when she was about 3, which she came through with flying colours. Everybody knew Leslie. She really was a lovely little girl.
Leslie lived with her mother, stepfather and elder brother and sister on the Turf Hill estate in Rochdale. It's Sunday the 5th of October 1975.
And a very nice record that they've suggested is this one.
Leslie? Yeah? Just pop in here a sec, please. Yeah? You just go to the shop for me. I only want a loaf of bread. I want an air freshener while you're there. Okay, I won't be in a minute. Bye.
The local spa shop was in Anstall Road, a 10-minute walk away.
Where are you going? Oh, to the shops. Do you want anything? No, thanks.
Bernadette Hegarty was 10 years old at the time and lived on the same estate.
I'd known Leslie since we were small. We used to play together. She only lived a couple of doors away. As she was going to the shop that day, I was walking up behind her. We didn't walk up together because we'd fell out at the youth club on Friday over a maxi dress. So Leslie went off up the lane and I went round the other way.
Leslie was never seen again by anyone who knew her. The shopkeeper couldn't be sure that she ever reached the shop. An hour later, a few roads away from the Moleseeds house, Emma Tong was waiting for her son, who'd arranged to take her out for the afternoon.
Through the window, I saw this car with a child sat in the front.
A man in his 30s with thinning, fluffy brown hair got into the car.
It was a dirty, like a beigey colour, with the red round, as though it was ready for respraying. I saw that poster of the little girl when I was going in town, and I thought, I'm sure that's that little girl I saw in that car outside of my house, you know.
By 1:30, Leslie had been gone more than an hour. Laura went to look for her. About 20 minutes' drive from Rochdale is the A672 linking the M62 with Halifax. At about 3:30 that Sunday afternoon, Christopher Coverdale saw something that struck him as odd.
As I came around this particular corner, I saw a man and a young girl on the skyline. He was quite a large chap, portly, receding hairline.
On a cold, misty October afternoon, it was strange for anyone to want to go walking on the moors. At dusk, just over 2 hours later, Sandra Chapman and her husband were driving past the same spot.
There was a white car in the lay-by and it had all this red primer on it, and I took particular notice because it was parked very tightly in the corner and there was no one around.
3 days later, Leslie's body was found just a few yards from the lay-by. She'd been stabbed repeatedly.
Time doesn't.
Well, perhaps tonight, Trevor Wilkinson, someone can help find who did kill Leslie and right that terrible miscarriage of justice.
That's right, Sue. West Yorkshire Police last year, having uncovered the evidence that clearly showed that Stephen Kisco was not the murderer of Leslie Moleseed, we began re-evaluating the evidence that was gathered in 1975. That evidence revealed very striking similarities between the sightings of Emma Tong and Christopher Coverdale. That last sighting of Christopher Coverdale's was within yards of where Leslie's body was eventually recovered.
What exactly are those similarities that were striking?
In both sightings, the man was, in 1975, believed to be in his 30s. He was wearing a dark brown jacket, lighter coloured trousers and a light coloured cardigan underneath the jacket. The child's clothing in both sightings was identical to that worn by Leslie. What must now be remembered is that that man would be in his late 40s or in his early 50s now.
And how many people do you have who seem to have seen that white car with the red primer around it?
Apart from the sighting in the lay-by that has been shown tonight, there is 3 sightings in Wellerth Lane near Mrs Tong's house. 2 of those other sightings, the people are convinced that it was a Vauxhall Viva. One of the people who saw it believe, and he is from the motor trade, believes that it was a 1965 model, and that would mean that it could possibly be on a D plate at that time.
Now, on that afternoon, there was another sighting in that lay-by, it's October the 5th, which could be very significant.
As we passed this lay-by, we saw this ex-GPO van, horrible painted colour, and I just turned around to the door and said, "Oh, look at the colour of that ruddy thing."
Just seeing the van parked there with the rug, you know, all around the windows, that I think made us think that probably somebody was courting.
Now, how important do you think that could be to you?
It's a very important sighting. Mr Jones says that that sighting and that colour of the vehicle is the best one he has seen since 1975. That vehicle we know had been in the lay-by or visited on several occasions between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. on that afternoon. It may not be connected with the murder, but it might be somebody who actually was there for other reasons that they couldn't come forward in 1975 who might have seen something very relevant. There was 8,000 inquiries to try and trace that vehicle. It wasn't traced. We asked that person to come forward now who owned the vehicle, who might have seen something. We realised that all the sightings we're asking people to put together, the man, the vehicle and that vehicle, are 16 years old. But what has been impressed us is the clarity of the memory of people who have come forward since 1975. We actually believe that in 1975 there was a member of the public, and a viewer tonight probably, who had suspicions about a member of the family, a neighbour, a friend, a work associate. And now, since 1975, they may have reoffended. They may have come to notice of the police. They may even be in prison now or have served a prison sentence. We want them to come forward and tell us about that person. They may have been very anxious when the body of Leslie was on the moors that day, that time between the 5th and 8th of October 1975. That anxiety would have been relieved when Mr Kisco was arrested and eventually convicted. When his appeal was become successful, that anxiety may have returned. We need that phone call. The nightmare that has revisited the Mulsey family twice in 16 years needs to be laid to rest. We want a phone call that will give us a key that unlocks this case and finishes their anguish forever, and also Mr Kisco's.
And this is the number, if you can help, 081 811 8181, here to the studio, or you can contact Bradford Police Station direct. That number is 0800 212 392. That's a free phone number, 0800 212 293.
There's been news about a case we featured in January's programme. A young man, John Threlfall, found dead in his home near Morecambe. Now, a new medical examination has cast some doubt on the original pathologist report, and it seems possible John died by accident, not from murder. At any rate, there's to be an inquest soon. The murder inquiry has been closed.
And going back to a photo call from last June's programme, we asked for your help to identify a building society robber. A number of viewers rang in with information, and on the 9th of March, a man was arrested in South London. He has now been charged with 6 armed robberies.
Now to this month's photo call. Here are Superintendent David Hatcher and Detective Constable Jackie Hames to take you through the faces.
First, Stephen Francis Miller. If you'd seen him, you'd remember him. In the Rhondda Valley, where he comes from, people know him as the caveman. He's able to survive living rough in the mountains. South Wales police hope he can help solve a murder. The victim, Adrian Hughes, was attacked at a friend's flat on Tuesday the 3rd of March and died 2 days later. Stephen Miller is 36 and 5'10". He may have a ponytail and be clean-shaven now. He's got bolts tattooed on each side of his neck, and many others like Steve and Dad written on his left arm. If you know where he is, please don't approach him. He could be armed.
Do you recognise this woman, Amanda Bernadette White? In the new year, a woman persuaded horse owners advertising in the West Country that she could sell their animals for a better price. 26 horses are now missing. On the 29th of January, Amanda White left Malmesbury in Wiltshire and hasn't been seen since. She's about 5 foot, slim with brown permed hair and has a West Country accent. She may be calling herself Amanda Scott. If you know where she is now, please call.
Can you help police in Bristol to identify this man? Saying he had a gun, he threatened staff at the Abbey National Building Society in the town centre on Tuesday the 11th of February. He's 30 to 40, 6'3" to 6'6", with wavy medium brown hair. Do you recognise him?
And the flying squad in East London would like to speak to Terry John Hammond, who comes from Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. Last year, we appealed for your help on an armed robbery in Harold Wood, Essex, on the 15th of March. We now believe Terry Hammond may have vital information. He's 27, 5'10", and has an East London accent. He hasn't been seen since last September, so if you know where he is, or you can help with any of our photo call cases, please ring now.
And this is the number to call, once again, 081 811 8181. That's 081 811 8181.
Somewhere in the east of England, two small-time robbers have been engaged in a partnership that's led so far to at least 2 violent deaths. You may recall a murder reconstruction we did 3 months ago in Lincolnshire, where Fred Maltby was robbed and battered in his home. Fred Maltby was a quiet and self-contained man whose home was in a village just south of Lincoln. He'd lived in this farm cottage for 40 years and seldom ventured far afield. Property developers had once offered him £500,000 for his 15-acre smallholding, and it's possible someone thought Fred was better off than he really was. On Tuesday, the 1st of October last year, at 9:45 p.m, a witness was driving home past Fred's house when he had to swerve to avoid 2 men running across the street. They were last seen heading towards a local housing estate on Larne Road. Since then, another man, Joe Rylett, has been killed, and the detective in charge of the case, Superintendent Stuart Clifton, has now linked the 2 inquiries. The victims lived about 2 miles apart, both were retired, both were thought to keep cash on the premises, both were attacked on Tuesday evenings, and both were killed in the same way. Joe Rylett was divorced and lived alone in a flat above one of the 2 betting shops he'd started up in Lincoln. One of the shops was managed by his son Eddie, and Alan had now more or less retired. He was shy but charming, fond of poetry, of music and of golf. And though he could be tough in business, among his friends he had a reputation for generosity, sometimes making loans of several £1000s.
If your hands are apart, then you'll slice it for sure. Okay?
Twice a week or so, Joe would walk just round the corner to St Botolph's Court, which is sheltered accommodation for old people. His mum has lived here for several years.
Oh, Joe.
The last time she was to see him was the night he died, Tuesday, the 28th of January. He was with her till around 8:30. Meanwhile, opposite Joe's shop in High Street, a security guard noticed someone waiting. There may be nothing sinister in this, but a man was sitting in a red or orange C-registered Astra. Do you know who it was? He honked the horn and waved at someone.
Oh, it's lovely.
At about 8:25, another witness came across another car in Bargate.
I noticed a brown Escort car, and I saw a man stood at the driver's side door with fair to mousy coloured hair, about 5'10", 5'11" tall, with green mountain boots or Wellingtons on.
She's asleep now.
Before he left, Joe saw his mother's care assistant. She was the last person known to have seen him before he died.
You're off now, then?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't made her anything to eat.
Oh, that's all right. I'm just going home for a while. I'll be back about 10. I'll make her something then.
Okay. Thank
There
you.
you go.
Thank you.
Question of sport, which...
Someone else, though, was to speak to Joe that night. A friend who placed a flutter with him now and then.
The 2 programmes when Ian returns from the England tour. Bill's partners tonight are Ian...
Hello, Alan. It's Mike. Yeah, fine. Yeah, I'm dogging it tonight, yes. Yes, Oxford, if that's okay. 1, 2, 9 o'clock on, 50p reverse. Oh, I've got you a bad time, have I? Yeah, okay, bye. Bye. It wasn't a normal Alan-Mike telephone conversation in the sense that he was a little more hurried. There was noises in the background, which I heard distinctly, i.e. banging, and also voices and a little bit of laughter.
Then, at 10 to 9...
I was walking down Bargate past Rylett's bookmakers, and I saw a bloke crouched down in the side entrance. He was wearing a suede jacket, maybe leather.
Did you see someone here as well? Upstairs, Joe had been preparing sandwiches. Clearly something, or someone, had interrupted him. About 50 minutes later, another witness was crossing High Street, just opposite Joe Rylett's shop. And this woman saw them a little further down the road.
I passed these two youths that were running wildly. They ran up St Catherine's. They had to run into the road to avoid two old ladies, and a car beeped to them. I had to stop at the traffic lights. When they got towards the lights, they shot out into the road. Again, a car had to sound his horn and avoid them. I passed them just going past the St Catherine's garage on Newark Road, and that was the last time I saw them.
Did you also see them? Or were you in one of the cars that swerved out to avoid them? Joe Rylett's safe was open. £3,000 was missing. Next morning, when Joe's son, Eddie, arrived to open up the shop, he found his father lying dead with severe wounds to his head. Stuart Clifton, murder is rare. For a man to kill twice successively is very rare, but for two men to kill in successive episodes, it's almost unheard of.
It's certainly unheard of in Lincolnshire. Two murders that are so similar in the space of 4 months causes me to worry a great deal. I'm worried that this may develop into yet another murder, may develop into a serial killing. Because of that, I'm using Crimewatch to appeal to the public of Lincoln. I believe that there are two people concerned in these murders, that perhaps only one has done the killing, and perhaps the second one has felt the need to tell somebody about it. Tonight I appeal to that person to come forward and contact me through Crimewatch so that we can prevent another tragedy occurring.
You think it's as serious as that?
I do believe that there is the potential for another murder. I'm quite hopeful that someone in Lincoln will take the time and trouble tonight to ring us in the studio so that we can prevent yet another serious incident occurring.
Now, they make quite an odd couple, these two, don't they?
Yes, they do. One is rather large, a little over 6 foot, and the other's quite small. The bigger of the two is described as a skinny build. He's got mousy-coloured hair, and he wore a corduroy coat, something similar to this. And one of the points of appeal I'd like to get over tonight is if anybody in the city of Lincoln knows anyone who fits the description that I've just given, who wears a coat of this type, then I would encourage them to ring me urgently in the studio tonight. They don't have to give their name.
The smaller guy was wearing distinctive clothing too, in as much as vivid white shoes, trainers or something.
Yes, the smaller man had a bomber jacket on. He's about 5'6" with dark hair, again in his mid-20s. He had dark trousers and white training shoes, which looked as if they may be in new condition.
Now, obviously, people living in Lincoln are going to be fairly concerned about what you've said. Perhaps we should make it clear that they seem to be, firstly, acting only at quite long distances in time, one from another, secondly, going for quite specific targets, but perhaps there are also things that people can do to protect themselves.
Well, yes, of course. Clearly, there are two people in Lincoln who are prepared to commit murder. We know that one is tall and one is quite short. If people are visiting and they fit that general description, then obviously the public must be aware of that. I would not encourage anybody to let people into their houses unless they're quite sure of the people that they've got at their door.
And if people have got suspicions about somebody who might be the killer, do you suspect that person will have what characteristics that people might recognise apart from being tallish or 5'6"?
Yes, I'm fairly confident that there will be one dominant personality in this, one killer perhaps. And that killer will be known in the City of Lincoln for his extreme violence. So I'd appeal for people in the City of Lincoln who know people that fit this description and who do show these violent traits to contact us here in the studio tonight.
Well, please ring straight away. The urgency is pretty self-evident. 081 811 8181. If somebody has told you anything in confidence or you've strong suspicions, don't let this go any further, please. 081 811 8181, or try the incident room in Lincoln itself, 0522. That's 532 222. 0522 532 222.
Well, now with our file of incident desk cases this month, here again are Detective Constable Jackie Hames and Superintendent David Hatcher.
Tonight we need your help to find this man. He attacked a young woman in Brixton on February the 18th. She was walking along Effra Road on her way to work when he forced her off the pavement at knife point into this house. She was sexually assaulted and her throat was cut. Doctors say she's lucky to be alive. Her attacker wore a very distinctive navy blue tracksuit like this, with the word Hummel in yellow. He's 5'10" to 6 foot, slim build with what's known as a flat top haircut. He also took this, a rare imitation Chanel scarf, so rare there are only 4 in the country. And also these distinctive ankle boots. If you recognise this man, or were in Brixton that Tuesday rush hour, that's the 18th of February, and remember anything, please do call.
And next to the Netherlands, where Dutch police need your help to solve a murder. On the 10th of February, a man's body was discovered in the Heemradsdingel, a street of the centre of Rotterdam. Following information from national publicity, police now believe he's British, but have been unable to identify him. This is an artist's impression. He's thought to be between 20 and 30, 5'11" with a medium build. He had 5 false front teeth and a scar on his left eyebrow. He was wearing this brown jacket made by Winch, a red short-sleeved t-shirt, Levi jeans and these brown shoes. Perhaps the most distinctive item are these patterned socks. If you think you know who he is, please ring now.
On Tuesday the 25th of February, an armed robber held up a member of staff at Howard's Jewellers in the village of Broadway in Worcestershire. He got away with a large amount of jewellery in this Green Rover 213 saloon car driven by an accomplice. The car was found abandoned 3 miles away in this pub car park. It had been stolen last October from Watchet in Somerset. Perhaps you recognise the robber. He's in his late 40s, about 5'6", with thinning ginger to light brown hair, and he had a very blotchy face. He may have been wearing this coat, which was found later nearby. The driver was very much younger, around 25, with short dark hair and a chubby face. Does he still have that moustache? If you recognise either of the men, please call.
Do you recognise this? It could be the vital clue in a rape inquiry in Hemel Hempstead. It was worn by the attacker and has quite a distinctive motif, possibly a semicircle with teardrops or splashes and a yellow flash across the centre. Colleagues haven't been able to find one like it. The attack took place on Wednesday the 18th of December last year. The attacker is in his early 20s, about 5'10", with short mousy coloured hair, and he had a gold Tudor rose stud earring in his left ear. If you do know who he is or can help with any of our incident test cases, we need to hear from you urgently.
Here's the number, 081 811 8181, 081 811 8181.
Well, a brief progress report on some of the calls we've been taking so far. On the Leslie Molseed murder investigation, there's been a witness who saw the white car in the lay-by in 1975, has rung in again to give his name in case police need him. Somebody thinks they may have been the owner of the blue van seen in the lay-by on that afternoon. And we've had useful information, it seems, on 3 out of our 4 photocall cases, so we'll keep you posted on those. To look back at last month's programme, although Crimewatch in fact received so much acclaim, there is disappointingly little to report on most of the cases. That is, of course, with one notable exception.
That exception, of course, was the arrest of a man next day and charges that followed for the murder of Julie Dart and kidnapping of Stephanie Slater. You may be interested in 2 details which have not so far emerged. It wasn't just the tape we played, the kidnapper's voice, that led to the arrest. If you recall, we compiled a profile of the offender, including artist's impressions and details of his car and of his movements around the country. We had so many calls, in fact over 1,500, that the police gave priority to viewers who thought they could put together several pieces of the jigsaw. One woman did just that. She then phoned her son to see if he agreed, and within minutes, separately, they both rang in. It was the combination of clues that led to the arrest.
It's interesting to note, by the way, that despite the voice and despite the drawings of the kidnapper's appearance, despite all the many different clues we gave, not one of the other 1,500 callers actually gave the same name.
Now, back for the first time since before Christmas, a chance to see if something looks familiar in our treasure trove of pictures, rugs, fine porcelain and toys. Here with our Aladdin's Cave of Property in search of rightful owners is Eric Knowles.
Thank you, Nick, and well worth the wait. For starters, feast your eyes on this wonderful Jacobean carved oak overmantel. Decorated with episodes from the Bible. There's Cain and Abel, and there's Adam and Eve, and you can see that fig leaves were that little bit bigger in those days. Another popular subject, Europa and the Bull. It features on this Vienna porcelain vase of around about 1890. Good quality gilding, and it's one of a pair. But as for the next object, well, it's got me flummoxed. I'm not sure what it is. He's got the body of a shell. He's obviously a landlord, and if he is, mine's a pint. But whether he's English or whether he's Turkish, I just don't know. But one thing I do know, that no self-respecting Victorian lady would be without a work basket, or better still, a work table. And here's a modest example. It's in walnut with a burr walnut top. Nice little feature is this fretwork panel. Now, when it comes to paintings, I like paintings with a bit of atmosphere to them. And here's an oil by a man called Rose. It shows the Thames at Wargrave just after a thunderstorm. I like the way the light just falls on the sail of that Thames barge. But plenty of shipping in this Dutch Old Master by Stork. Something of a sedate scene until you realise that there's a prize vessel in the background giving a 5-gun salute. Now, here's another prize vessel, if I may. It's a tiny little loving cup, and it's engraved Crew Prize, Second Boat, Amateur Race, BYC, August the 23rd, 1919. But there's one picture here I would like to take home with me, and the name is Alice Buckingham. And here she is in a pensive mood by the artist Woodhouse Stubbs, and it's dedicated to her. Good name for an artist, Woodhouse Stubbs. And if you're a composer, you can't go on with a name like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And here he is, a good quality French casting, late 19th century. And here's another name for you, D.W. Morris of Cornhill, London, an early 19th century Georgian bracket clock. A case of time standing still. And I wish time would stand still in my garden, but it's getting to the time where we've got to start cutting the lawn. I would hope it would look something like this. Now, it's signed Sylvester Stannard, but I doubt it. I mean, I've got the flowers, I just need the house. Now, when it comes to fruit painting, the Royal Worcester artists, they're in a league of their own. And here's Mr. Platt with 2 vases, and Mr. Kenyon down there. Lockyer, I beg your pardon, Mr. Lockyer. Look at those peaches. You could just reach in and eat one. And finally, here's another little peach. It's a German biscuit-headed doll of about 1900, and here she is in all her finery. She's all dressed up and nowhere to go, unless you can offer the right invitation.
If you can, 081 811 8181. Or you can phone the Thames Valley Police direct on 0865 266 000. That's 0865 266 000. By the way, there are a number of different ways you can help the police identify stolen property, of course, and it's certainly a good idea to write your postcode, if you can, and your house number on all your valuables using a diamond tip stylus pen, a bit like this. With ornaments or delicate property, you can use an ultraviolet pen of this sort, but if you do, be careful because the ink can fade over time. Now, surprisingly, pens like these aren't normally available in the high street, only through mail order. Details are available if you want to try and get some on CFAX on page 628, or of course you can contact your local crime prevention officer. You should also, please, this is very sensible, video or photograph your valuables so that at least you've got a record of them if they're stolen.
Well, now to our last appeal for your help tonight, which is a robbery at Preston's jewellery store in Guildford in Surrey. What makes this crime particularly serious is the vicious treatment of the store's manager. Our reconstruction begins 4 days before the robbery on Tuesday the 3rd of December at Watco's Paint Depot in Hackney in North London. Having just loaded up a consignment of paint, these two delivery men decided to have a cup of tea before moving out. When they saw someone driving their van, they weren't at first surprised. Workers often need to move vans around the depot. It was only several minutes later that they realised it had been stolen. Four days later, Saturday the 7th of December. It was 6 o'clock and Preston's was closing for the day. That night, the staff had planned to get together for pre-Christmas drinks and a meal.
I'll just go and change first.
Oh, all right. We'll see you later at the pub.
Yeah, okay. Bye.
Mark Riley, the manager, always parked his car outside the city centre, and two of his colleagues gave him a lift there.
Get on the floor. Okay. Face down and put your arms out.
Didn't see a great deal of them at all because I was blindfolded almost immediately. I gained the impression that there were three people. Two of them were calm, in control. They seemed like they were accomplished or well rehearsed. The third, however, he was more agitated, he was uneasy, he wanted everything to hurry up to be more quickly.
Right away, all right?
Sticky
on the
stands, don't you? Get up. You just do your bit, you can be over your business for Christmas.
They basically wanted information on how to gain access to the shop, to turn off the alarm system and to open the safe. I did proceed to give them the combination to the safe. They seemed to feel that it was perhaps more complicated than they'd at first thought.
Where's the keys? In the briefcase.
The side door to Preston's is in Jeffrey's Passage, which is a busy cut-through from Guildford High Street. At this point, having deactivated the alarm, the plan should have been foiled by backup security arrangements. Unfortunately, that particular night, there was a temporary fault in the system. But having gained access to the safe and knowing the right combination, they didn't manage to open it.
Scotch and coke, please.
I'll have a pint of lager, please.
Hi, how are you? Move along, move along.
Okay.
Let me get Tom. Is Mark not here yet? No, it should be here in a minute.
They had gagged me, so my first concern was to remove the gag because it had restricted my breathing quite considerably, and this I managed to do.
You've been a naughty boy, haven't you, telling us porkies, eh, huh?
I am.
What do we do now, number one?
Carry on with plan one, as we said. This is what's going to happen. We're going to take you back to the shop and you're going to open the safe for us. Another pint? Yes, please. Jane?
Mark should be here by now. I think I should go and look for him. With Mark being the manager of like a prestigious jewellers, it's always a possibility in the back of your mind that something like a kidnap or something of that sort could actually happen. So by the time when he decided to go and he had still hadn't turned up, then I was really quite anxious, so it was very important to actually go back and check the shop first.
It's now about 7:15.
All right, now.
Anyone who saw them that night would remember. Mark's jaw had been broken and his nose was bleeding profusely. He may have looked like a drunk being supported by two friends.
They lifted the blindfold but made sure I kept my head straight facing the safe and shone a torch on the dial of the safe. So all I could see was the dial on the safe. And they instructed me to open the safe. This I did manage to do, although it was difficult because I was still handcuffed, and particularly the right hand was very, very tight, and my right hand was completely numb.
Take him downstairs.
One of the men took me down into the basement of the shop. This was possibly one of the most frightening parts of the whole situation, because by now I was no use effectively. And at this point I thought, if this is going to happen, if they're going to shoot me, then this is when it's going to be. So this was obviously a very frightening time.
It was just about 7:30 as Jane Redman arrived at Preston's with her boyfriend. At first, they were relieved to see Mark's car outside.
We got to the shop, looked in the window, and at first we thought it was Mark in the safe. There's just a guy there with a trench coat on.
But a split second later, I realised that it wasn't. I turned, and anything I could think of was to make it more difficult for the robbers to get away by taking their car.
Right, come on, let's go!
Police, please. Well, that really was a terrible ordeal for the manager, who seems to be coping well now, 3 months on. But Mick Bobchek, the first clue to this crime might lie in the paint that the van contained at the time it was stolen from Watco's in Hackney in North London. It's very distinctive paint, and if somebody's got it, they'll recognise it.
Yes, that's correct. The van had been just loaded with 47 tins of this type of paint. If anyone has come by any of these tins, bar from the Watco depot, then we'd like to hear from them.
And there's a kind of double compartment in one of those tins, which, as I say, if you've got, you'll recognise. It must have been quite busy in that high street. It's a Saturday evening. Loads of people surely must have seen what happened, you think?
Yes, it was around 7:15 on a Saturday night, so we'd like to hear from anyone who may have witnessed this event. We do have a sighting of a man who was standing outside the Olympus Sports Shop, which is situated opposite Preston's Jewellers. This would have been around about 7 o'clock. He is described about 6 foot tall, and he was wearing a Timberland style type of shoe. We do need to eliminate this man from our inquiry, so we'd like him to come forward.
He might have seen something vital, of course. Are there any other people in particular that you want to speak to?
Yes, in fact there were 3 young women who were sitting on a bench which is opposite Preston's itself. They must have seen something, so I'd like them to come forward, as they may have something that could help us.
And presumably other witnesses must have seen the men running away after they'd left Jeffrey's Passage. Where did they go after that?
Yes, they would have merged onto North Street, right opposite Groom's Public House, which would have been quite busy at that time of night, around 7:30. So we'd be interested in anybody who saw 3 men racing out of the passageway.
Right, if you're in any doubt, just to remind you of the date, it's Saturday the 7th of December. And of course there's somebody who's you've had a couple of phone conversations with who would like to contact you again.
Yes, we've had an anonymous caller who's rang twice with information in relation to the stolen van, and I would very much like to hear from him again.
And finally, somebody might recognise some of the stolen jewellery. Some of it was pretty unusual.
Yes, some of the items are quite rare. This is an emerald and diamond ring. These emerald earrings are quite old. This is a diamond and sapphire crucifix. Also stolen was a Shakudo Japanese locket, again quite rare.
Just a few examples there. If you can help, then please get in touch. The number here to the studio is 081 811 8181, or you can ring Guildford Police Station direct, and that number is 0483 31111. That's 0483, the code for Guildford, 31111.
Just going back to incident desk, it's quite possible that the body discovered in Rotterdam has now been identified, but the 3 most important developments so far this evening on the Brixton sex attack, a really ghastly attack. A name has been suggested, and there are details about that individual which apparently fit other known details in that case. On the Joe Rylat murder, a police officer has rung with the name of a suspect, and that's being taken, for obvious reasons, very seriously indeed. On the Leslie Moleseed murder, a call which has really made the investigating officers very excited indeed. I, for obvious reasons, can't give you any details now. Suffice it to say that inquiries are being made with the caller at the moment, and we may have more to tell you by the time we come back for Crimewatch Update.
And that is almost it, and to come back for that update, very late, I'm afraid to say, 1/4 midnight, immediately after question time. Our lines do stay open until 12:30, so if you can help, please do call.
If you can't stay up till then, who can blame you? But do bear in mind that Crimewatch brings together the worst of human nature, of course, but also, in the desire to help, and the calls that are coming in right now, the best of human nature too. So please don't, on our account of nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.
And once again, the correct number to call is 081 811 8181, and the lines are open until 12:30.
Rachel has a good reason. As does Beatrice.
Ralph, I don't think we should be doing this.
Neither do I. See you tonight.
And Annie?
We've all got sorrows, so why is she screaming?
We're all screaming.
Sunday at 9:05 on BBC One.
In our own way.
Plenty to scream about now on One as more unsuspecting celebrities come face to face with the outrageous Ruby. No half measures here, just the full wax.
Hello and welcome to the show. Where are all the Americans? I mean, have they just stopped coming to Europe or what? You could always spot them in their little tartan pants and Burberry raincoats that no English person would be seen dead in. No longer are they over here flooding the countryside in search of their English heritage. Remember that? Remember when they all simultaneously decided to find a dead relative from 1542? People from places like Burp, Tennessee would suddenly come here, who 1 generation back were related to farm animals. Now they suddenly needed to find out if they were part Plantagenet. Hey, buddy, your uncle was a heifer, leave it alone. Everybody in America has to have a tartan now. They all want to be called Mook something. So they cover their whole house in their tartan. You know some